Welcome to Psyber Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. My name's Josh, and today we are going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, which was released in 2014, starring Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana. What were all their names now?
Bradley Cooper, Vin
Bradley
Diesel,
Cooper as the voice of Rocket, Vin Diesel as the voice of
John
Groot.
C. Reilly,
John C. Reilly's in it.
Michael
Bautista,
Rooker.
that was the one I was thinking of, who plays Drax. Yeah, Michael Rooker as Yondu Odonta.
Yep.
And Lee Pace as Ronan the Accuser. So with me today, I got... Yeah, well, for like 5 minutes. So today with me, I got Bob, Matthew, and Heather, and we're going to talk about it now. I love this movie. This was, to me, like the first time... Don't get me wrong. Marvel movies have always had a lot of comedy in them, but they were always very serious movies. They took themselves seriously, and they were superhero movies first. I've said this before. Superhero movies first and comedy second. This was a movie that leaned more heavily into the comedy. And I think that some of the repercussions that came out of it, I'm not a big fan of, but the movie itself, I loved. My only regret with it is that so many people liked the comedy aspect of it that they started bleeding more comedy into the other Marvel movies, which I felt were to their detriment, especially Thor, which we can talk about in a bit. But
yeah, I think that it was a good movie, and one of the things I had was kind of like, I think back on in 2013, the movie came out in 2014, but it was like, oh yeah, they're gonna have this raccoon and a tree. I remember like people talking about like, what? And they're like, how are they going to do this? Because again, we hadn't had this level, which I think I have no basis to back this up, but I think that was why they did the whole soundtrack the way they did, the comedy the way they did, because even though it was in space, they're introducing like a whole new, talking about expanding the world that had already been built up until this point. Now we're in space.
Yeah,
so
Thor did space. Thor did space first, but this was the one that really expanded on space and said what there was out there.
Well, Thor did like other worlds, which I guess, you could. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of spacey, especially with the Dark World, because, but ultimately this was like we had to see all this new stuff, and so I think that the way they did it, and I agree with you too, is and something we can get into in a little bit, is that the comedy element worked for this movie because it was designed to be that way. But you're right. I think it's because everybody was like, oh my gosh, we have to do it that way. And you get like Ragnarok, which took the comedy even more. And so it kind of redefined the comedy there. I don't know what else anybody else has got on that.
Yeah, I even rewatching it, the only thing that made it Marvel to me is that they mentioned Infinity Stones. Like, no familiar faces, no, it was a completely separate movie for me that really didn't tie into Marvel so far until we get to like Infinity War Endgame kind of territory.
Right.
So
yeah, there was no Avengers, there's no cameos, there's no Agent Coulson just showing up going, "Hey, Star-Lord, I'm from S.H.I.E.L.D."
Right.
I remember correctly. And the only reference to Earth was, in the first 2 minutes of the movie, when Peter's taken from Earth. So it's like It's very different from every other Marvel movie. So
I could be wrong, but I think I remember that they said something about that they were intending that, like they wanted it to be a completely fresh movie, even though everyone was going to know it was Marvel, because they put the big red Marvel logo at the beginning, and because they mentioned Infinity Stones. They wanted everyone to know this is part of this shared universe, but they also wanted this to be completely separate to the first movie. Yeah. I could be wrong because it's been a while. It was released in 2014, so.
Well, and it was another one of those, the Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't like a huge, what were they?
They existed. They were in the comic books, but if you didn't read comic books, you didn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't have known. Yeah, you wouldn't have known who they were.
Yeah, but to be fair, that could be said about a number of the heroes at the time. Iron Man was a character who was largely forgotten, a big B-tier character.
Oh, 100%.
His movie. Same 100%. Thing with Cap. Cap is my favorite, but he was kind of lost to history before the movies brought him back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was, again, when they were talking about like Bradley Cooper is doing the voice of the raccoon, and I'm like, wow, there's going to be a raccoon. And it was like Vin Diesel is going to do. I'm like, there's a tree guy. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
what are they going to do? But they've had success. But I think this was a big, one of my notes here was kind of the first point was like how this was a gamble because they kind of had to move the story along. It's obviously at this point they're cementing the Infinity Stone storyline sort of, and the Thanos is the big bad, obviously. But I think that we got taken to a totally new area with, a new level of comedy that we hadn't seen before. Thor was, kind of the first risky guy in the sense of that brought some level of magic and otherworldliness, obviously, to it.
Yeah.
But then it worked. And
to a degree, Kevin Feige was gambling from day one because
sure,
he aside from the fact that he had done something that no one ever had the balls to do, which was to greenlight all these separate movies and put them all together. We've talked about that before, but also the fact that he based it on a bunch of characters that were not as popular. Marvel's far and away most popular character at the time, and even now, I believe, is Spider-Man. And he didn't even touch Spider-Man.
Well, and that's not gonna. Well, he couldn't for legal reasons.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think that it would have. I think that even if he had access to Spider-Man, I don't think he was interested. I think he wanted to tell the Avengers story.
Right. And well, we had Andrew Garfield Spider-Man at the time, so I don't think he was interested.
Yeah.
But I didn't like this movie when it first came out. I really, it was jarring. The pace of the movie was, even now, it's almost a breakneck pace watching it, even knowing what to expect. It's like, wow, this movie moves really fast. It puts a lot of trust in the viewer. It's like we already said, it's an entirely new cast of characters. I wouldn't even call them B tier. I'd say they're C or D tier. And he changed them from the comics too, appearance wise, which for the better, I think.
And some of it is just practicality.
Sure.
It's difficult to do what they did in the comic books. It's much easier to do what they did in the movies.
Right. But now I do enjoy this movie a lot. I think it's a top 5 MCU movie. It's aged really well, but it was definitely the riskiest up until this point. And I do like it. I do agree that this movie had the humor aspect, and I'm going to catch some flack for this, but I think it both changed and then ruined the MCU in a lot of ways going forward, and a lot of other superhero movies, which we already said it kind of bleeds into it. I think that's mostly negative. I think even James Gunn was unable to replicate what he did with this movie, with Guardians 2 and 3, at least properly. I think this is the only Guardians movie I rewatch because I don't like the other two. But that's where I stand with it.
I actually did like the second one. The third one I need to watch again. I've only seen it a couple of times, and it didn't really stick with me. But overall, I mean, I like James Gunn's style a lot of times. That doesn't mean I like every movie he's made, because I'm still not a big fan of the Suicide Squad. But yeah, he did that, right? The second one?
Yeah, he did the Suicide Squad in 21.
Yeah. But I loved Superman, but we've already talked about that. I love the new movie.
He just has, I don't know, I think he thinks highly of himself and thinks he can do no wrong as a writer. And so he takes those bolder steps, and I would say most of the time it doesn't work out. And now it's tarnished the MCU because other directors were either forced or wanted to replicate what happened with this movie.
In some ways, I agree, because, in what you said, I think in some ways it was to the detriment of Marvel making comedy where it was not necessary. Right. I said it when we talked about Thor. I even said it outright. The first Thor movie is my favorite one of the 4 Thor movies. I was going to say 3 because one I pretend it doesn't exist. I don't like to do that. So 4 Thor movies, but the first one is easily my favorite because it takes the matter seriously. There's still a lot of comedy in But Thor, a lot of people think Thor Ragnarok is a better movie. I think that it's got a great story, but there's so much comedy, and Thor is just played for laughs that he ceases to be a superhero, and he just becomes a joke.
Right. But that's ultimately what happens with a lot of other heroes because again, this movie, and even in this movie, there's times where it's hard to feel the emotion they're trying to portray because it's undercut by a humorous scene 30 seconds later or 30 seconds prior.
Yeah, we talk about a superhero movie, but to me, there weren't superheroes in this movie. Not in that same way. I don't know. And maybe it's just the nature of these characters, with their backstories, but I mean, it just doesn't feel the same superhero kind of movie. I don't know.
Well, I agree, but that's because it's not your typical superhero movie.
Well, and it starts off super sad.
Yeah, well, that's the one note. I try to take notes whenever, when I'm rewatching these movies for this podcast. I want to take notes. This movie, I had exactly one note, and that is that I found it interesting that it starts with this tragic, sad scene and then immediately launches into comedy.
Yeah, and that's an area I wanted to talk about was one of the notes I had was the whole tonal whiplash from the grief of his mom, and then suddenly he gets abducted, and then suddenly it's, Marvel Studios,
In a way, I think it works in a way because it makes the comedy of once he starts playing Come and Get Your Love, like as soon as that song hits and he starts dancing to it, it's like all the tears are gone. If you had any, some people might have felt emotional about Meredith dying. And then, boom, he starts dancing. He grabs that rat thing and starts singing it into it like a microphone. And it's all of a sudden, it's just really funny. And I think it's funnier given how you felt a minute ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, that childhood trauma that he has there, a couple of the notes I had is, his personality is kind of built on that whole thing that, his mom, the guilt from his mom, which comes out later, the present she gives him, which we find out is the next little mixtape that she made him.
Yeah. And he
mixtape
hasn't opened it in, what is it, 26 years?
Yeah. And, and kind of the question that I came away from that is Star-Lord, is Chris Pratt's character emotionally stunted, or is he more emotionally strategic? Is kind of my question. But I think, that opening scene really sets a tone more than most.
I mean, there's
to answer that, I would say he completely uses humor as his coping mechanism for his trauma.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, that's I think that's the whole reason he's the way he is. I did find it so in that opening scene, he had been in a fight with like another schoolboy or something like that because they killed a frog or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they jumped to him like kicking the rat things. So I don't know, that kind of bothered me, I guess, in terms of, he seemed like such a good little kid, but.
Well, to be fair, those rats were going to attack him.
All the scars of trauma, the past is the past, and here he is now, and just trying to deal with the life he's got. So.
Yeah.
But to be fair, those rats looked like they were going to attack him. They didn't look like normal rats that were scurrying away. They were running toward him. So maybe he's dealt with them before and he knew that those...
Maybe.
No.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, they don't really say, but yeah. It was something that I never thought about that. Yeah. Yeah, me too, Matthew.
A silly thing. Yeah.
But I do think it might have been, I don't know. It's not a long movie, but maybe it would have been good to see a little bit more of that Earth Peter to connect with him. I think that was my issue when I first saw it. It was really hard to connect with these characters, and they go through a lot in this movie. And like I said earlier, the movie trusts the viewer And it expo dumps a lot. I think there's a lot of expository, especially in the prison scene. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but it just feels like it trusts the viewer, but it also has to exposition dump in a way that other movies didn't.
That could be because of that 26-year jump. And to be fair, I wouldn't have minded seeing more scenes or some scenes of young Peter with Yondu. When he was still part of the Ravagers, and they've done some of that stuff in the things that came out afterward. But in this movie, we don't see any of his young life when he was a kid.
Yeah, there was a lot of just hints dropped in this movie. Like the mama, she's dying, like hinting about his father and the nature of who his father might be. And
when we picked you up, my crew wanted to eat you.
yeah, and like you get dropped the hint, like we should have just delivered him like we were told. I mean, like there's way more to this story, but they're holding it, ransom for us, I guess. So I felt like
waiting until the second movie.
Yeah, but did we really need any more? Didn't we get, I mean, ultimately, I think we got enough to move the story along and to identify, because this is a character-driven movie, and it's all about the chemistry of the characters. One of the things I wrote down is how this movie runs on vibe more than really story mechanics, and how each one of the Guardians brings something. You get a little bit of Drax, Groot's still an enigma. You get Rocket, a little bit of his backstory. I mean, I don't need to see flashbacks of his experiment necessarily to understand where they all are emotionally and, kind of where they are in their lives right now. You have enough to define their personality, define their character traits, and then how that all ends up going together. I don't know. For me, it wasn't like I was left with anything like, oh, geez, I wish I wish I would have seen more of this or more of that. It was kind of like bringing you in where you're at right now.
I agree. If this had been a movie specifically about one character, then yeah, they would have needed to give more of that character. But they had to fit 5 characters, and they needed to give us enough about each that we cared about them all by the end. So there really wasn't time. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I mean, I don't think, all of this criticism, I don't think it took away from the movie and the plot that was presented for us, with these particular characters. I mean, they kind of rounded it out, toward the end, like we're all losers here, meaning we've all lost something, and finding that common thread among them, like, yeah, all of that was still, good, well presented in the movie. I'm a person that I guess I just like to know more background of characters. And yeah, like you said, they had, 5 brand new characters, right? At least 5 brand new characters that they had to kind of at least, give you something about. So yeah, it didn't take away from the story at all, as far as them coming together,
I think,
finding the common thread to do what they had to do.
Yeah, I think that their character comes out in little pieces, like you said, here and there. It comes out in little pieces. You get a little scene where they're like basically introducing him when they're in the prison. They're like, "Who's this? It's Peter Quill," and blah 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 blah. Right, mm-hmm. That combined with a lot of the other stuff, I think, is enough that it wouldn't necessarily leave you lacking. Which, let's break down each Guardian.
I think that's what Matthew was saying, though, is because we're learning about these characters so quick and we don't have time, they are placing a lot of faith in the audience to keep up. And I still think that it works.
It paid off.
Yeah. But I did pay attention, but some people might not. So
it's just hard on that initial watch if you've not watched any other MCU movie up until this point, which I don't know why you wouldn't. But I don't know. The core group, it works, that chemistry, but the other connections, Peter to Yondu, it feels so forced. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit. It feels so forced in Guardians 2 that we're supposed to see them as father-son, and there's none of that. There's zero. And that bugs me from a writing perspective. And it bugs me that people laud James Gunn as a super amazing writer, but he has, I don't know, I'm not saying every writer needs to be perfect, but the way people hold James Gunn in such high regard, but he shoehorned a lot of things in there, like the Yondu and Peter connection. All of a sudden, in 5 seconds, when Yondu's dying at the end of number 2, spoilers. I don't know. It feels, again, expository, like we just talked about with the prison scene. It feels like a lore dump that we should have seen and we didn't.
Yeah, I agree. That tell not show.
Yeah.
And I would like to see more show, but I also think that they would be stuck, especially in this movie. They'd be stuck. There's just not enough time to show everything. And I would have liked this. That's why I said I would have liked to see more of young Peter. Right. He was still with Yondu, and that would have worked, I think, in volume 2. But that movie was also pretty full, and I don't know where it would have gone. Like where they would have put that in.
But I think the core group, the 5, they work well together. The chemistry works well in a discordant type of way.
Yeah.
Dad, you wanted to dive into each character. I don't know where you're going with that.
I was going to dive into each character. So okay. I was going to talk about my notes here. Peter Quill, questions. Charming fraud, a man hiding behind pop culture references. What do we think? Peter Quill. Heather.
I think trauma and clinging to all that he has of an 8-year-old memory of Earth and trying to use that to define himself in this strange place where he has ended up in life.
Yeah, I think he's the least interesting of the Guardians. Spicy take there, maybe, but I mean, like Heather said, he might as well be 8 or 10 or however old he was in 1988. And that's shown in later movies, especially in Infinity War, when he causes them to essentially lose because he has no control over his emotions.
Yeah. I don't know if they have Star Wars. I mean, they do have Star Wars, so maybe he has memories of Han Solo, because I get the feeling he wants to be Han Solo.
Yeah.
I mean, adult Peter wants to be another Han Solo. So he's laying with an Ascavarian.
What about Gamora?
I like Gamora as a character. I think we connect with her deeper in future movies than we do in this one. I like her arc in this movie, though, that it's very quickly shown that she's betraying Thanos and she's an anti-hero, essentially. I guess they all are, but she is the most anti-hero of the 5.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have liked to see more of the relationship between her and her sister, Nebula, especially knowing that Nebula was going to eventually be an ally. I knew that going in, but we didn't get that in this movie. So, I wanted to see more of that relationship. All we really got in this movie was that Nebula hated her.
Yeah.
And the impression I got from this movie was that Gamora didn't really consider Nebula. Like, she just barely talked about her at all.
It felt like a Thor Loki scenario where Nebula was insanely jealous, and she had every right to be, and she was also vindictive. Again, with reason. I like that we see their relationship develop in the future movies, though.
Yeah. Agreed.
And Rocket, I had here, my notes I came away with weaponized insecurity. Was kind of like he always had his bravado going, but he had his moments of especially his relationship with Groot.
I'm assuming that going even back to when the character was first created, but certainly in this movie, the first thing I always think of, and I think that it was intentional because it's also the shot they used in the trailer introducing the character to audiences everywhere, was him grabbing the gun and then the close-up of him going, "Oh, yeah." And then just him, firing the gun and laughing about it. That is Rocket to a T. You don't need any other description. Just watch a picture of a cute furry raccoon going completely bananas with a rifle and just shooting everyone and laughing while he does it. And that's Rocket.
Yeah.
See, I don't know. I felt like the anger is again like a trauma response. Whatever happened, whatever happened to get him where he was, like it's all sarcasm and anger and Napoleon complex kind of stuff. Like, everybody belittling him, like all that kind of stuff. So
they even show that when they first get to prison.
Drunk Rocket, yeah.
Well, before that, at the prison, when he shares a cell with Peter and he comes into the cell without his shirt on, and Peter is looking at his back, and he's got all those electrodes and things sticking out of him.
Yeah, all the modifications, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that we're supposed to understand immediately he's been put through the ringer, but they won't get into that until the third movie. They delve a little more into it in the second movie, but we don't really get his backstory until the third movie, unless you read the comics.
No, but his way of dealing with everything and anything is sarcasm, dismissal, like even the scene on Nova when he's, sitting there just kind of people watching when we first meet him.
Yeah.
Like,
very,
everybody's stupid. Everybody's stupid here, kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
Walk by yourself, you little gargoyle.
Right, exactly. Look at that guy. And it's Stanley.
Yeah. What a Class A prevert.
Right. What about Groot? He was, Baby Groot at the end. Baby Groot was like everywhere after this movie came out.
Yeah. And I actually, in some ways, I didn't like Baby Groot. He's got his moments, but in this movie, I prefer adult Groot because the jokes, I like the jokes that were with Groot in this movie.
Yeah.
Which weren't, he is never supposed to be the sharpest tack. He's,
but he does seem to have the
not really
heart of all of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's the heart of the team.
He's the heart of the team, but at the same time,
how much he said with only the words
three words.
Group, except for we are.
Except for one time. Yeah. But
he said the most, significant things in this whole movie.
Yeah.
Somehow, just in the nature of the character. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's also a character who, drinks the fountain water. Even after he said he wasn't drinking it, he'll lie right to Rocket's face, and eating his own leaf.
Right.
Off on his shoulder. And Rocket.
But then he meets the little kids and
has a profound
to the little girl, that's it's the simplicity of just caring about the world, I guess.
Everyone loves Groot. Everyone loves Groot.
Matthew, what do you think about Groot?
I like Groot a lot. I definitely think his sacrifice at the end, I was pretty emotional. I didn't cry or anything, but I could feel the tears welling up, and I was like, wow, this is kind of powerful. And he just said we are Groot. And I think there was the crescendo of the soundtrack. And I think he's a cool character. He's essentially Chewbacca to Rocket's Han Solo, or Lenny to George, if you read Of Mice and Men. It's kind of that dynamic.
Yeah, there's none of this. Rocket doesn't do him in at the end. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Tell me about the rabbits.
Well, no, it's not that.
But that's a good. I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's that.
Rocket dynamic. Doesn't kill him, but he's still. Yeah, he's kind of the big dumb kind.
He's the big oaf. Yeah. Not saying Rocket's gonna dome him at the end of the movie. My goodness.
Yeah, I think it was hard on the rewatch just because you know that is not his end. So I think when I saw it the first time, it was much more impactful, the sacrifice at the end of, it's like, you hold out some sort of hope, but on the rewatch and given how many more movies have come, you know a little bit of what's going to happen next. So takes
that he does die. Like, some people think that he lives on in Baby Groot, but Baby Groot is not Groot. That it's a completely different character. Groot did die at the end of the movie. He just had an offspring.
Yeah, well, but you don't even know that. Like, at this moment, he sacrificed himself, and all it's there is a bunch of twigs. and Rocket like, falling apart.
It is the best version of Groot, though, that we get out of it.
I think everybody says that. Yeah.
Even in Guardians 3, when he's the big rock tree version. I don't know how you would describe that at the end of the third one. Anyway.
What about Drax?
Drax is one of my favorites in this one. I think he steals every scene he's in. And I think that's largely in part to Bautista's acting ability, which I don't think anybody expected, to be honest. Former
this is
WWE star, and now he's a prolific actor with a lot of range, actually. If you've seen like Blade Runner 2049, he's in it for 10 minutes, and that scene's super memorable.
Well, The Rock managed to do that transition.
Well, yeah, but The Rock isn't a good actor.
He's gotten better.
No, he hasn't. He's terrible.
I enjoy him.
I actually did like this version of Drax too, because he's like, I've always loved the thing about not understanding metaphors, and they play that over and over again, and it's great in this movie. The later movies, they carry it so far that they make him stupid, which I don't know if I'm on board with. Like,
well, they backgrounded his character.
Yeah, when I was rewatching this time, I'm like, oh, he's not as stupid as I remember. And it's because the future movies made it more of a, idiotic kind of thing.
Even though it's really,
he didn't get it or something, but no, he he like had a level of understanding in this movie.
In Infinity War, he actually, he starts thinking that if he stays completely still, he'll become invisible. Like, it's funny in the movie, but it's stupid.
It's so counter to the character that is introduced here, though. Yeah.
Yeah, this character would never think if I stay completely still, I'll be invisible. He's just because humor.
He was very literal in his, but it didn't mean he was stupid. He was just very literal.
Yeah, and I love that joke. They play that more. For those you haven't been on Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, and I'm not going to blow that for you.
I knew that was going to come up at some point.
Well, you definitely should see it. You should definitely go on that ride. But there is a part where Peter Quill says, "Oh, it's a piece of cake," and Drax says, "Wait, there's cake? Where is this cake?" and then Quill later on, they're talking to Rocket. Rocket tells his plan. It's like, "Oh, we're all toast. First there was cake, now there's toast. This plan is making me very hungry."
Yeah.
Well, that's playing up to his, how he takes everything literally. Like, nothing goes over my head. I'd catch it.
Yeah, yes. that kind of thing I love, because the whole not understanding metaphors is funny. It's
right.
I don't like when they leaned into it too hard in the later movies.
Yeah.
Again,
even though it was funny,
the humor bleeding into other movies when it shouldn't have in some spaces.
Yeah. The villain, I know that's something that we've talked separately about, but Ronan, not Thanos. I know this is like Thanos is in it and stuff like that, but Ronan, I felt like Ronan was just straightforward sort of. I mean, initially I was like, gosh, he's so one-dimensional, but on the rewatch, I'm like, he's a little teeny bit of something, but really,
he's got a backstory.
He's just there. Yeah, he does, but the backstory barely comes out.
Yeah, his father and his father before him, they were all, big Kree warriors, and they got shafted by the Xandarians, I guess, and so he's out for blood. But that's about it. That's about as complex as it gets. Go ahead.
I like Ronan a lot. I wish we had seen a lot more of him. I think his intro scene is chilling and memorable. Like, he could have been an Avengers level threat, like Ultron. He just feels very cold and calculating and willing to do whatever it takes to complete his objective. I think the whole Kree versus Nova Corps Xandarian lore was glossed over, and I think that was a shame. Lee Pace, I think, is a really good actor. I think he needs more fame. And for anybody who listens and reads Brandon Sanderson, I think Lee Pace would be a great Lord Ruler for the Mistborn movie whenever that comes out.
I was actually nervous about, the thing is, I've heard people talk about Lee Pace and how great he is. And when I first saw the movie, I remember hearing people like, "Oh my God, Ronan is being played by Lee Pace." And I've seen him in one other thing, and that was The Hobbit. He played Thranduil. But
And he was good in that.
He was good in that too, but those are the only movies I've seen him in. I think he's been in some shows that I've never seen, so I don't really know much about him. I liked him as Thranduil and I like him as Ronan, but I don't know anything else about him. So when people get so excited about him, and I have no idea.
That's why I said I think he needs more fame, more roles. And I think Ronan had the potential to launch his career, and it didn't do anything for him, whether that was the heavy makeup or maybe he was overshadowed by other things in this movie. I don't know.
Or the fact that Ronan did come off as a bit one-dimensional.
We
did say that he's
But is the one dimension what this movie needed? I mean, you had a Thanos introduction, so you kind of know that's going on there. Like, one of the notes I had was, one of the questions I was going to ask you was, does Ronan matter, or is he just a delivery boy for an Infinity Stone, and it happens to be, and that's what because it's not like the Guardians were going to go take on a Thanos level threat. So, is Ronan's one dimension actually what this movie needed, or did they need some character with depth, knowing that we were getting Thanos?
I don't think Ronan was one-dimensional at all. I think he was overshadowed by everything else in the movie, and there was no time for more of him. I don't think he was a MacGuffin for the Infinity Stones. I think that was the Collector, because they were bringing the orb to the Collector, only trying to keep it away from Ronan, who, I mean, I guess at that point, then Ronan is connected to the Infinity Stone, but we don't see him really going after it until the Nowhere scene.
Yeah.
I love Nowhere. I want to throw that in there. I think that's one of the best places in all the MCU. Like, I want to know more about that, but anyway.
Is the skull of a dead Celestial, right?
No, I know, but it's just like the lore implications behind that. It's like, well, who is the Celestial? And I just think it's a cool location, and it feels very space opera-esque.
Yeah. It would fit right in with like some of the weirder places in Star Wars, and although they could have even gone further with Gore in it, because it is the head of a Celestial. They're mining the brain matter and spinal fluid. That's that yellow stuff that Drax gets thrown into.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it all the more gross when you think about what it is.
Yeah.
So they could have gone even further with it, but I guess they decided,
Heather,
yeah.
Ronan.
Sorry, I was still stuck on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Nope, lost it. Sorry. Move on.
That's okay. Well, if we come back to it. But I think obviously the big.
What was it about?
Mm-hmm.
Was it about
Nowhere?
Ronan?
But
go ahead. Nowhere.
But I don't remember what I was going to say.
So your thought
pause, unpause, whatever. Let that one go.
No, this isn't a pause moment. This is your thought. Your thought was going nowhere. See what I did there? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I want to talk about the soundtrack, because that obviously is sort of an elephant in the room, at least when it comes to this movie. I mean, the soundtrack was.
Did Heather get to talk about Ronan? Do you want to talk about Ronan?
Oh yeah,
I don't have much else to add about Ronan. It's
okay. All right.
What about Lee Pace?
So the soundtrack. What about Lee Pace?
He was in a very good Apple series, actually.
Was that Ned?
No, I think it was an Apple.
He won an Emmy for Ned.
It's called Foundation.
Oh yeah, that Isaac Asimov series. That's right. Yeah. He played the God Emperor, I believe.
Yeah, Brother Day.
Yeah. Foundation's great. I haven't watched.
I've never seen it.
The book was good. My dad had me read it. So, but anyway, soundtrack.
Well, I love the soundtrack, but I'm a big music guy, and I love the 70s. So,
I mean, the intro alone. I know it's funny when you think about it. The two scenes really is the hospital scene where we go from, oh my gosh, mom gets kidnapped by a spaceship, and you're just like, oh my gosh. Then it's Marvel opening, and then it's suddenly 26 years later, we're in space, and then it's darn, you know what I mean? And then we get the Guardians of the Galaxy. We get his little dance thing. He's like Tom Cruise, risky business, sliding across the ground. You know what I mean? It's like, like a total tone setter. You know, again, hooked on a feeling, ain't no mountain high enough at the end. You know, when he's thinking about his mom and he opens the gift, like super, not just, a great soundtrack, but a soundtrack that, in my opinion, was a total narrative device. Every single song meant something. It wasn't just in there to be idly in there. It set a tone, or it fed into the emotion of the scene. I don't know. Would the movie have worked with a more generic score? I don't know if it would have. I mean, because I think it really enhanced
not
in this
one.
case.
No,
yeah, not this
it's
case.
too important. But I think part of that is also, I don't know how much of the soundtrack is Guardians and how much of it is actually just James Gunn, because he always does that. He loves to put lots of music into his movies, especially older songs. But the music in this movie is almost as much of the identity of Guardians as the Guardians themselves.
Totally. I mean, you can't you can't hear Hooked on a Feeling without thinking of that movie. Now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean,
Peter built his whole identity around, the soundtrack that he's clung to for all these years too. I mean, I think it's crucial, specifically with him as a character.
Yeah. And I don't think that the movie would have worked if it was just a generic. I mean, the score itself is good, but nothing to write home about. But the music that he chose for the movie was all really good. I think that the opening in the hospital is probably my least favorite song, and it's still a great song. I'm Not in Love by 10cc. But
yeah,
Come and Get Your Love is such a great song. Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede. Cherry Bomb. I love that song.
Cherry Bomb.
That was a good scene. I don't think I appreciated that scene and that soundtrack choice as much the first time as I did on this most recent rewatch.
You want to know a little fun fact? I'm wearing those headphones. You can see it right here.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I always wear these. So
since we just do audio, I figured it wouldn't be a well-received point.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that, so he had a first generation Sony Walkman in those. You go on eBay, you will not find one working, no joke, for less than $1,500. That's how much those are going for. And there's ones new in the box that are like $2,500 for a Sony Walkman, first generation, which is the blue one, the one he had in the movie. Anyway, just fun fact. Those things, it's like that older tech. I was talking to a guy.
Just a fun fact that you've investigated this.
Well, no, because I was talking to a guy who refurbs old tech, and he goes to estate sales, and he said that, like, if he doesn't get there early enough, it's all a line of 30-something guys and gals, and the first thing they go to is old 8mm camcorders, CD players, tape decks, Walkmans, everything. They want all the old 80s and 90s / early 2000s, we'll call it, tech.
That's because humanity peaked around that time. So.
No, totally. 100%. 100%. 100%. But yeah, I think that the soundtrack, I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else on that, but
it's such a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
I also love Spirit in the Sky. That's a great song on it. Norman Greenbaum. And Moon Age Daydream. Anytime Bowie shows up, I'm there. And I remember the first time I showed my daughter, she fell in love with Fooled Around and Fell in Love by Eldon Bishop. She couldn't get enough of that song. She she downloaded it and she listened to it all the time.
Yeah, some of this go ahead, Matthew.
I was going to say, I don't think I have much else to add to the soundtrack, but you can get that up.
I was going to say, we've already talked a lot about humor and, my question on that one was, we kind of talked about it, but the question I was going to ask is, and we kind of covered it already, was, did Guardians create the MCU humor formula for better or for worse? And I think we established that the humor in the movie was there. A lot of it was because of the emotional trauma or emotional whatever backstory of each one of the characters. But I think we established, and we don't need to beat this up anymore, but that the humor worked for this movie, but it was like they quickly
worked so well.
They're like, oh, we need to do this everywhere. And then, the biggest one I look at is Ragnarok, Thor Ragnarok, where it was
But
just
the
like
same thing,
all humor and everything else.
but that's what Hollywood does because they don't know. If, I don't know if maybe every single director in or every single studio head in Hollywood share a brain because the same thing happened with Batman when
Right.
Christopher Nolan made Batman Begins, and then he made The Dark Knight, and he did the gritty realism. And so everyone in Hollywood was like, "Oh, gritty realism works. Let's make a Superman movie with gritty realism. Let's make this movie with gritty realism." It doesn't work for Superman. It doesn't work for the other character. Not every movie has to be gritty realism, but that's what they chose to do because Christopher Nolan did it well. So now James Gunn made Guardians of the Galaxy, and we made it very much comedy. Well, now we got to make a comedy out of Thor. And it didn't help. I mean, this isn't his fault, but it didn't help that Chris Hemsworth loves comedy. He loves doing comedy. He did that Ghostbusters movie that no one liked, but everyone praised his part of it, and he loved doing it. And he said he enjoyed doing comedy. So they're like, "Oh, well, we're making another Thor movie. Let's make it a comedy. Who cares about story? Let's just make him stupid and silly. Let's do Endgame and make Fat Thor, because then we'll have fat jokes in there for an entire 2.5 hours." You know?
Yeah, I could talk on how every impact that this humorous take has had on superhero movies and the genre going forward. I could talk about that for like an hour and how much it infuriates me. Thankfully, not all of them were like that after
No.
this.
We got quite a few that weren't.
Do you think some of the reason they pulled like the big comedy one, like, because we've talked about this with the last couple of like, they were still recovering from Avengers moments and you know, they were all going through their PTSD moments or whatever. Do you think they placed this comedy one in there because they were getting so heavy and they needed to lighten up the entire
It's possible.
Cinematic universe, you know, like, and now for something completely different, you know, like
it's possible that that's what they were thinking. The problem that I think Matthew and I both have is that
it affected
rather
everything
than
going forward.
everything coming afterward, they decided to make a comedy, and that's where the problem lies. I still like Thor Ragnarok, but I think I would have liked it more if it was more of a superhero movie and less of a comedy with, you know, naming wormholes the devil's anus, because that's funny. It doesn't make sense, and no one would actually refer to it that way. But let's put in, you know, some toilet humor because kids will laugh.
I don't know. I like the Willy Wonka scene where he meets the collector.
It was very funny. Yeah.
You are about to meet the collector. You will meet the collector in 5.
Not the collector, the Grandmaster.
Oh, sorry, the Grandmaster.
The Grandmaster.
Sorry. Yeah. I know we're talking about Guardians.
Gosh, Gen X. I'm going to throw that at you since you did that to me last week.
What did I do last week?
You're like, "Oh, millennials," because I said the wrong Western movie.
Well, millennials, whatever. You know. Anyways. I think though one of the things we need to talk about too, and I had some notes on this, is the whole Infinity Stones, right? This is finally where we get the Infinity Stone backstory.
Yeah.
And what's going on. The collector tells what it is. I know everybody talks about James Gunn is actually the one in this movie that came up with the story of the Infinity Stones. It took him 3 minutes to write it, that this is the backstory for the Infinity Stone, and then he whipped out that collector scene to literally explain his 3-minute concept, and that's become the lore of at least the MCU.
James Gunn did not write the Infinity Stones.
He says he did.
No, I'm sorry, not he didn't create the Infinity Stones, but it was like, how do we tell this story and how do we explain these stones, type of thing. And he wrote all that, and that's, I know, a big thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's the story that Marvel ended up carrying forward from there. So, you know, again, you get the collector talking about it, you know, and so one of the questions I had is, you know, did Guardians make the Infinity Saga feel truly epic at that point with the collector explaining it, and there's these 6 powerful stones, and they had the Power Stone there, and in Thor: The Dark World they brought over the what was it, the
ether,
which was the reality stone. Yeah. Right, so we already had a reality stone, which the collector had. Now he's got the Power Stone,
and the Space Stone.
And where was the Space Stone?
It's the Tesseract.
Tesseract.
Oh, the Tesseract. Did the
And
collector have that too?
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
or was that
no,
just part of
Odin
the
had it.
story?
Odin
Yeah,
had it.
yeah. He referenced it in the story. It was part of the visuals.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
story. They
So-
showed an image.
And they had the Mind Stone, but people didn't know that people already. I remember when the movie came out, and everyone started coming out with every comic book fan started coming up with theories where the Infinity Stones were and which items that we had seen. Everyone knew immediately that the ether was the Reality Stone because he even showed in the movie a fluid thing that was red. So
Right.
everyone knew that. A lot of people were already suspecting that the Mind Stone was in Loki's scepter spear thing.
When did we first see? I'm legitimately asking because it's making me think. When did we first see Thanos?
End of Avengers.
At the end
1.
of the Avengers, the end of the first Avengers movie, we get a glimpse of him. But he was not played by Josh Brolin at the time.
Yeah.
He was played by another guy. All he did was like turn to the camera and smile.
Right.
And I think that was practical effects. I think that was makeup, if I remember.
Yeah, I
properly.
remember. I knew someone who claimed to know the guy, and I forgot his name.
But to answer the questions about, with the Guardians having the impact on the Infinity Saga, I mean, this movie has the largest implications on the Infinity Saga. I mean, the first phase 1 had to build up the Avengers. And yeah, there was some space implications we've talked about with Thor and even Avengers 1. After that, though, you got the Winter Soldier, which brings it back to Earth completely. There's nothing else. And
as we talked about, it's a very heavy movie.
Yeah, and so this,
heavy,
despite all
it's heavy, Doc. It's heavy. Sorry.
Despite all of its humor, I think this has the largest story implications moving forward, which I think works for this movie's benefit. I think without the Infinity Stones and the implications on the Infinity Saga, this movie may have fallen flat. It wouldn't even be worth watching, I think.
Damien Poitier, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, is the guy who played Thanos in the.
Oh, I know that guy. Just kidding. I don't know that guy.
I don't remember who it was. I knew someone who claimed to know him, but I don't even remember who I knew who claimed to know
him. I think James Gunn, though, gives himself a little too much credit. He acts like he had to create. I mean, they did. They were like, you have to create the lore for the MCU, but it's not like he didn't have anything to go off of. Like, he acts like he had no foundation. That's like, you got so many years of comic books that you can go back to and cherry pick from. That's my issue with James Gunn in a lot of ways, is he holds himself in such high regard and everybody follows along.
Well, that's why he's at home in Hollywood.
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know.
You can't be a director if you're not fully yourself. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I got a couple coworkers like that.
He's a little too full of, like,
we all
I don't know.
A couple coworkers like that.
How did they know how the Infinity Stone worked? Like, it reacts to organic stuff. Yeah, it reacts with organic stuff. All it has to do is touch the ground. I'm like, where did that knowledge come from?
I wonder if it's just, again, one of those movie magic things where it's like they grip the stone, maybe it's full of all this knowledge and you just innately, you know what I mean? I'm sure, like, let's say, I mean, like, you pick up the stone
if you
and
grip
then
the
you
stone,
feel
you die,
the power.
right?
You feel the power.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but they explain that he's half, his dad is
Peter is able, because he's half celestial. Yeah. But why did Ronan?
But they don't even really say he's half celestial. They dropped a couple hints.
He just said he's half something else. That's what she says.
Yes,
he's like
said
something else we haven't seen.
Something very ancient that we've never encountered before.
Right.
Yeah.
We also know, but what we also know is during the backstory when Yvonne is telling them the story of the Infinity Stones. He says how a group of people managed to contain the power for a few minutes and then it destroyed them too. And then we saw, what's her name? The pink skin girl.
Yeah.
Grab it.
No.
I was going to say Clarice, but I don't know if that was it.
No, it was
Clarice.
I know.
Karina.
Yeah. She grabbed the stone. Yeah, she grabbed the stone. Yeah, and she grabbed it, and she immediately exploded. But Ronan
Not immediately exploded. She suffered quite a bit, and then exploded.
Yeah, but it didn't look like she had much control over it, other than just to scream in pain and explode. Ronan grabbed it and he was able to maintain enough wherewithal and presence of mind to request his club thing, axe, whatever it was,
hammer.
yeah, so that he could put the stone into it. And I guess that works. I guess as long as the stone is in something and not directly
again, we're just supposed to. Okay, that's how that works. Okay.
Well, but they showed that giant being in the collector scene for the viewer, maybe not for Ronan, but for the viewer, he had the Infinity Stone attached to his hammer.
But that was a celestial.
Well, and in Endgame, they had all the stones in Thanos' glove, and they're all throwing it to each other to keep it from them, and none of them are being affected by it. So, putting it in the hammer.
But even just understanding what the plan of attack was, and understanding, like they're just going to try and get to the ground so they can touch the ground with it, and the whole planet will.
It works with organics.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you just found out that this stone exists, but apparently you know how it works. Okay. So a little movie magic stuff.
Well, maybe there's some powers that be. Obviously, Thanos would know what he's after. Obviously, Ronan knew what an Infinity Stone was, because that's when he decides to betray Thanos. It's like, it's an Infinity Stone?
Yes,
now that I found it, I already have the knowledge.
So, maybe Nova Prime, again, very little backstory on Xand and the Nova Corps, but maybe Nova Prime knew an inkling of knowledge, not trying to do mental gymnastics for the plot holes there, but maybe
there's another plot hole that's even bigger, and that is during the inspirational speech that Star-Lord gives to the rest of the team when he calls them losers, and then he says, like, we have a chance, and Gamora says, we have a chance for what? He says, to give a shit. And Drax did not just like stand up and immediately.
I was waiting for a punchline from that too. Yeah.
Like you would think. Maybe it's because he's starting to get it. Now he's part of the Guardians, so he understands how they talk. Even if he doesn't understand metaphors, he's able to at least recognize that it is a metaphor.
It was a missed moment in the movie, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know that I missed it. I don't think I would have been happy. If he actually
but like a comment, another punchline in there.
Why would he defecate for this?
Yeah. They could have done something.
Yeah, talking about the ending. Yeah, it was the whole they made a family. They all found connection and having a family. It's kind of an old,
a kid.
Oh yeah, an old.
They even had a baby.
And by working together, they controlled the Power Stone, and knocked out the bad guy, and now they're the definitive anti-heroes types of things. So, but the ending was good. They all came together from their separate areas. There's other movies that, and I can't give you an example, but there's other movies that I think did this same type of thing where it's all these people coming from different angles coming together. I was thinking earlier, and I was going to mention it, and we're talking about it when we're talking about everybody's backstory and how we wanted to see a little more of everybody. Like, would it have been better as a Disney Plus show?
No. No.
Probably not. No, I agree with you. I'm just saying that, that seems to be we have two options. We either get it in as a movie, or we can get it as
I don't know, a series with young Peter and Yondu might be interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
It's worked for a couple of movies.
Yeah.
But also, it's nothing new. But it's nothing new to have a group of disparate people that come together for a common goal. If you don't know one, Magnificent Seven. Hello. That's a
nobody.
Group of
not many people know. Not many people know who that is.
I know what that is.
Even the Avengers movie itself was a matter of
Yeah, disparate.
You have all these different angles and coming together.
Different types of people, they come together for a common goal. And the Magnificent Seven is a great example of that. If you want to see something that's not Marvel, And I was thinking of another one too. It wasn't as good, but The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
How dare you? That's a great movie.
It's okay.
I love
It's
that
not
movie.
a great movie. It's the movie that single-handedly retired Sean Connery.
I think he was just going to retire anyway.
But
yeah, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen I liked because it was different. But yes, it had a lot of issues with it.
It's but it's a similar type of story where you get a very different group of people who are very different from each other coming together because there's a common goal, something that needs to be done.
It's funny you mentioned that because when you think about it, and we took up, like Matthew mentioned with Guardians of the Galaxy, is like really trusting the audience. When you think about a movie like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, you really have to trust. Like, do you know who Dorian Gray is? Have you ever read the picture of Dorian Gray?
I have.
You know, I mean,
a lot
do you
of
know
people
Captain Nemo? How many people jump into 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea? And I don't mean the little Disney movie of Got a Whale of a Tale. I mean, like, you know, like the deep story. I mean, like all those people. You know, what are you going to do? You know, and then in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, they threw in, it was not part of the, comic book, it's Special Agent Tom Sawyer, got to throw in the American guy, Alan Quartermain, like who, but I think that the concept of, how much the audience, they want to trust the audience. I think the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a good study in that because it's like, do you know all these classic literature characters? Because if you don't, you're screwed because you only get like a little minute bit of detail of
But it's
I think a lot of people watch it and they've heard the name. They've heard Alan Quartermain, but go ahead.
I think with those movies though, and the same could be said for A New Hope upon its release, is if it's entertaining enough, no one's really gonna care. If you like Guardians 1 is entertaining enough to where like you didn't know that this tree and this raccoon have a history. It's just cool to see them all working together. Like it was an entertaining enough film. Same with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Even if you don't think it's a good movie, it's entertaining enough to the point where you don't need to know that Dorian Gray is immortal unless he sees a picture of himself and can't die.
Well, that's not even what happened in the book, though.
No, but that's how it's portrayed in the movie.
Right.
So,
right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about it. Wrap it up here.
But we also have one other group of disparate people coming together for a common goal. This show right here. Cyber Conversations. I'm sorry, that was. Wait, are you sighing because it was that stupid?
I'm not disparate.
I don't. Pause for the record so I can delete this out. So anyway.
Not your best segue, Josh.
No, it wasn't clever at all. This like anyway. So looking back on it now, which we kind of already did, but and the two questions I had, and we kind of answered one of them, was that is this the most influential Phase 2 movie? Which obviously we did because this one really lays the groundwork for everything up until Endgame. But where do you guys feel like this falls in the MCU in toto, as well as just Phase 2?
I think I answered that at the top. I think this is, for me personally, 5th place out of all of them, despite my initial dislike of it when it came out. It's gotten better with time, and I think it's, it continues to get better with time. I like it more on each rewatch for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't personally give you a number.
No, we don't need a number. Just
I enjoy it a lot. It's definitely it's one of the better ones. It's in the top half. This is my favorite Guardians movie of the 3. And I enjoy this movie a lot. Like when I'm doing a rewatch of the entire MCU, I'm always looking forward to this one. But, it's not my favorite, but I still love this movie.
Heather?
I feel like that's redundant in saying that because I love all the movies. Go ahead, Heather.
I find it highly entertaining. For me, it's still, even on the rewatch, sits slightly disconnected from Marvel as a whole, just because it is so different. Because how many movies before this, and then there's not a single familiar face. So it was something brand new, but it was exciting and it was fun. It was funny. I enjoyed the humor, but I do agree, like, I don't like how much that humor influenced future movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Dad,
But
you?
speaking of, sorry. Oh yeah, you.
Me?
Yeah.
You don't get out of this just because you asked the question.
No, I'm the moderator. Just kidding. No, I like Guardians of the Galaxy a lot. I like the first one. I think, if I looked at those three specifically, it's like the first one's my favorite, and then two, and then three. But I thought this one was really good. One of the things I thought about was, we had, there was a lot of personality. Like Matthew said, the plot kind of moved and it was fast, and they did like a lot of different things. But I think the characters themselves being like loud, like Rocket was like a bratty teenage boy type of thing, but they were all, everybody was really interesting. But I thought it was a really good movie, and it was, played a huge role in moving the overall story arc of phase 1 and phase 2 really toward Avengers Endgame.
I think this movie, its legacy, I meant to say this at the soundtrack segment, but I think the soundtrack invites everyone to this movie. I think about my father-in-law specifically. He loves this movie, and it's because of the soundtrack. So I think that adds a layer, despite, not knowing anything about the Guardians. If you went into this movie blind, I think the soundtrack alone welcomes a lot of people to this movie. It makes them feel comfortable in this fast-paced action sci-fi movie.
Right.
I appreciate the fact that the soundtrack was largely taken from songs from the 70s, because even though I missed it, I grew up, I was a teenager in the 80s, so I should like 80s music more, but I love 70s music. I think it's the best music of all time. Well, and I do highly recommend anyone who hasn't been there, get to Walt Disney World and go on Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, because the only thing I don't like about that was they brought back everyone except they couldn't get Bradley Cooper or Vin Diesel. Groot, it's hardly noticeable because all you need to do is find someone with a gruff voice to say, I am Groot. But Rocket's voice is noticeably different. But, it's still, he doesn't really talk that much in it. It's more about the ride. I highly recommend it. You need to come down here and experience it.
It is
much better than the one in California.
I don't know about that, but
well, the one in California should have stayed Hollywood
It's just Tower of Terror.
Yeah, not anymore.
I know, but it's basically the same thing. It shoots you up and it drops you down.
And it should have never changed.
I do like Mission Breakout, but it's not some kind of amazing ride. It's just another, take you to the top and drop you ride. But anyway, on that note, next week we are going to be talking about, even though it's not technically the end of phase 2, for some reason, it should be the culmination of everything up until this point with Avengers Age of Ultron. We're going to be talking about that next week. In the meantime, I want to thank Bob, Matthew, and Heather for joining me. And I want to thank the listeners for listening. If you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe. And as always, make tomorrow better than yesterday.